السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. We've reached the 20th hadith of this excellent work, Jawami al-Akhbar. And in this hadith, or rather in this section that we're about to embark on, the author rahimahullah ta'ala mentions a few ahadith that relate to tahara, purification. Now, this is not a book of ahkam, halal and haram, which is why he doesn't mention important ahadith that go into the details of ahkam. He doesn't mention important ahadith that go into the details of ahkam, how to make wudu, what are the conditions of wudu, what are the fara'id of wudu, and so on. And so we also won't delve into that too much, because it would take us away from the objective of the book. But we'll touch upon some of these things, inshallah ta'ala. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, al-hadith al-20, the 20th hadith. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يقبل الله صلاة أحدكم إذا أحدث حتى يتوضأ. متفق عليه. Allah does not accept the prayer of a person who is impure إذا أحدث حتى يتوضأ, until they make wudu. And the consistent practice of the Prophet ﷺ was to make wudu for every single salah. Every fard salah, the Prophet ﷺ used to make wudu. طاهرا أو غير طاهر, as Anas ibn Malik says in the hadith of Bukhari and Muslim. He would make wudu regardless. And so that is a sunnah. That is the sunnah. The sunnah is to have wudu, fresh wudu, for every single salah. However, on one occasion, the Prophet ﷺ performed salah consecutively, a number of prayers, without making wudu. So Umar said to him, إِنَّكَ صَنَعْتَ الْيَوْمَ شَيْءٍ لَمْ تَكُنْ صَنَعْتَ. Today, O Messenger of Allah, you've done something that you don't normally do. قَالَ عَمْدًا صَنَعْتُ. Said, I did that on purpose. To show that it is not compulsory to make wudu for every single prayer if a person is already in a state of tahara. Otherwise, the general wording of the Quran implies that we should make wudu for every single salah. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu idha qumtum ila salati faghsilu. O believers, if you stand for the prayer, then wash. And then the rest of the ayah talks about what to wash. However, that broad understanding is taken away through the practice of the Prophet ﷺ. And this once again shows us that the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is a tafsir of the Quran. And without it, it won't be possible to understand the Quran correctly. In the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar, also narrated in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, مفتاح الصلاة الطهور. مفتاح الصلاة الطهور. No, sorry. That's the hadith of Ali, not in Sahih Muslim. So that's in Jami' al-Tirmidhi, and it's authenticated by Tirmidhi. The hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar in Sahih Muslim is لا يقبل الله صلاة إلا بطهور. Allah only accepts a salah with purification, طهور. So it gives the same meaning as this hadith, and that's the first hadith mentioned in Jami' al-Tirmidhi. So anyway, the point is, this hadith of Abu Hurairah makes it very clear that losing wudu, if a person's in a state of impurity, wudu becomes fard before they pray. Now, wudu, although it's a condition for salah, which is the greater objective, wudu is an independent act of worship, and we touched upon this last week, didn't we? We said that wudu is an independent act of worship, which is why it requires a niyyah, an intention. And not just an intention of making wudu, but there should also be an intention of reward. Because in the hadith of Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ said, if a person makes wudu and washes their face, every sin they committed with their eyes is washed away with the water. مع آخر قطر الماء, with the last drop of water that comes down. And this hadith is in Sahih Muslim as well. And then if he washes his hands up until the elbows, every sin he committed with his hands is washed away with the water, until he got to mention the feet. And so, wudu is an independent act of ibadah. And this is why the successful Muslim is the one whose intention is, who's constantly aware of their intention. Because these are things we're doing anyway. None of us is going to pray without wudu. No one's going to pray without wudu. No one's going to pray in the masjid without going to the masjid. You have to get to the masjid to pray in it. And so when someone's intention is intact, they go far above someone who does outwardly a lot of actions but without that intention. رُبَّ عَمَلٍ صَغِيرٍ تُعَظِّمُهُ النِّيَّةِ, as narrated from Ibn Mubarak. Perhaps a small action, but it's made huge with a niyyah. It's made huge with a niyyah. And so making wudu washes away the sins. Walking to the masjid, every step is a reward and raises a person's rank. Sitting inside the masjid, waiting for salah is rewarded. Sitting down after salah is rewarded. Salah in jama'ah is multiplied in reward, and so on. And this, like I said last week, shows that the position of the majority of fuqaha is better than the position of the Hanafis, who don't require niyyah for wudu, and consider that if you make wudu without intention to make wudu, your wudu is valid, because they simply view wudu as a condition to a ibadah, not something which is independent. Which is true from one angle. It's not completely independent, but it's still an act of ibadah. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the general hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ, actions are by intention. And this is amal, no doubt. Now, there are 4 things that Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the ayah of wudu. And that is washing the face and washing, I like to say hands, not arms, hands. Number 1, because the ayah says hands. And number 2, because when we say arms, a lot of people can think that you're only supposed to wash your arm from the wrist up to the elbow, which is incorrect. When you make wudu, you have to wash the hand up to the elbow, which means from the tips of the fingers to the elbow. Regardless of whether you washed your hands in the beginning or not. Because that first washing in the beginning is recommended. It's not compulsory in the first place. It's a recommended washing of the hands. When we first begin wudu, bismillah, and wash hands. That's a recommended wash. You don't have to wash the hands at the beginning. You can go straight into madmadah if you want to. And according to Malik and Shafi'i, you can go straight into washing the face. You don't even have to wash your mouth or nose. But Ahmad and Ishaq say it's compulsory to wash the mouth and nose as well. So the point is, when we come to washing the hands, we're washing the hands up to the elbows, not the arms. Not just from the wrist up until the elbow. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. That's the second thing. The third thing mentioned in the ayah is wiping the head. And the fourth thing mentioned in the ayah is washing the feet. Ash-Shafi'i sufficed with these 4 things. He said these things are fard, everything else is a sunnah. Washing twice, 3 times is a sunnah, not fard, because it's not mentioned in the ayah. Washing the mouth and nose is a sunnah, it's not fard, because it's not mentioned in the ayah. Wiping the ears is a sunnah, it's not fard, because it's not mentioned in the ayah. That's how Shafi'i took this issue. That's how he dealt with this, and the Hanafis are of this position as well. As for Imam Ahmad and Ishaq and a number of the fuqaha of hadith, their position is that the ears are part of the head. The ears are part of the head. Al-udhunani min al-ra's. In the hadith of Abu Umama radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Al-udhunani min al-ra's. And it's a weak hadith. But, and Imam Ahmad weakens it, but its meaning is still valid. And they consider washing the mouth and the nose to be part of washing the face. So they consider, actually, washing the mouth and the nose in wudu is mentioned in the ayah. And wiping the ears is also mentioned in the ayah. Because the Prophet ﷺ has been given the responsibility of clarifying how to wash the face. And this is how he taught us how to wash the face. Mouth, nose, and the rest of the face. Are we following that? The Prophet ﷺ's responsibility is to teach us how to wash the face, how to wipe the head, and so on. And this is how he washed his face. Mouth, nose, and then the rest of the face. So should the mouth and nose be included in the rest of the face? According to Ahmad, yes, because it's part of the face. So these are two positions, and you can see why the ulama disagreed over those things. Wiping the head, according to Malik and Ahmad, also has to be the whole head. According to Malik and Ahmad, has to be the whole head. You wipe the whole head, not just part of it, or touch part of it. And the Shafi'i, rahimahullah, disagrees. Talking of Malik, rahmatullahi alayh, a few hours ago, Allah blessed us with a boy, alhamdulillah, a baby. And I decided to call him Malik, in the hope that he follows in the footsteps of Malik in his ilm and his amal and his scholarship as well. So my eyes are half closed because I'm running around. Anyhow, so according to Malik and Ahmad and many fuqaha, wiping of the head has to be the whole head, from the front to the bottom. Again, why? Who can guess why it's fard to wipe the whole head?
Because the Prophet
Good. Because the Prophet ﷺ is the one who clarifies how to wipe the head, which is mentioned in the ayah. And when he wiped his head, he wiped the whole head. The only time he didn't wipe on the whole head is if he was wearing a turban. And that's why the fuqaha clashed in their opinions. Because of that. Allahu a'lam. As for saying Bismillah, then saying Bismillah is something that is recommended according to the vast majority of scholars. Even though the mashhur of the Hanbali madhab is that it's wajib. But that's not an opinion which most ulama act upon. Nor is it the opinion that Imam Ahmad himself adopted in a number of narrations. Which kind of makes us possibly say that even Ahmad himself just emphasized saying Bismillah but didn't oblige it. And he weakens the hadith on the issue as well. طيب. الحديث الحادي والعشرون, the 21st hadith. He says عن عائشة رضي الله عنها أنها قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عشر من الفطرة, 10 things are from the fitrah. قص الشارب, trimming the mustache. وإعفاء اللحية, and growing the beard. والسواك, واستنشاق الماء, rinsing the nose. Rinsing the nose in wudu. وقص الأظافر, cutting the nails. وغسل البراجم, which is washing the inner parts that are difficult to reach, like in between the fingers and stuff like that. Washing them properly. وَنَتْفُ الْإِبْطِ, the ba is with a sukoon, not ibit, ibd with a sukoon. And some of the ulama said لا تحرك الإبط فيعرف, don't move, because the ibd is the armpit. And what's the opposite of sukoon? Haraka, isn't it? So the opposite of sukoon is either fatha, dhamma, kasra, and these are all harakat. So he would say, لا تحرك, don't give haraka to the ibd, otherwise a scent is going to come out from it. To help remember how to pronounce ibd correctly with a sukoon. Ibd, not ibit. Because if you say ibit, it means you've given it a kasra, and so you've given it haraka, and if you give it haraka, then problems may happen.
What does ibit mean?
The armpit. So from the sunnah al-fitra is to shave the armpit hair. وانتقاص الماء. And this means what? Al-istinja. حلق العانة, yes. وحلق العانة, and shaving the pubic hair, the hair around the privates. وانتقاص الماء, which means istinja, يعني الاستنجاء, which means using water to clean the privates after, relieving oneself. قال الراوي, and this rawi is Mus'ab ibn Shaybah. He says, وَنَسِيتُ الْعَاشِرَةِ, and I forgot the 10th one. إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ الْمَضْمَضَةِ, perhaps it's madmada, rinsing the mouth. Narrated by Muslim. طيب, I'm going to talk about the fiqh of the hadith, and then we'll talk about the khilaf of the muhaddithin on this hadith, inshallah. Briefly. The fitrah, فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها. فطرة فاطر السماوات والأرض comes from creation, doesn't it? And so the fitrah is the creation upon which, the way in which Allah created us. Everything has an ideal state. If it goes against that ideal state, that's a deficiency. So, if a fish was walking on feet on earth, that's against the fitrah. It's a deficiency. If a human being lived underwater, they obviously won't last very long, but that's against the fitrah, because it's against the way they were created. Allah Ta'ala has created everything in a way which is ideal for it. The objective of the shaitan is to deviate people away from this khilqah, from this fitrah. And that's why he's keen on people changing the fitrah. Because once the fitrah is changed, everything else collapses, doesn't fall into place anymore. And hence he made it a promise that he will encourage people to change their khilqah. فَلَيُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ, and I'm going to command them to change Allah's creation. Hence, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited a number of things which involve changing the fitrah. And he said, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ الْمُتَشَبِّهِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ بِالنِّسَاءِ. Allah has cursed men who imitate women. And He's cursed women who imitate men. Why? What's the big deal? Because it's a change of khilqah, change of fitrah, change of creation. And that's always the first step to endless deviation. Similarly, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited even certain changes to the physical body, like having tattoos, and like other things as well. Why? Because once again, it's directing a person towards damaging and ruining Allah's khilqah. Now, that doesn't mean that a person doesn't touch their body, like some Sikhs do. Hair is untouched, okay, and so on, because this is something that's natural. That's incorrect, because things can be natural, but the fitrah dictates that we should remove those things. The fitrah dictates that we should remove those things. Illnesses are natural. Urine is natural, at least a lot of things are natural. But the fitrah implies cleanliness, doesn't it? And that's why we see in this hadith a number of things revolve around cleanliness, tahara. And so, here in this hadith, 10 things are mentioned as being part of the fitrah. Some of these are mentioned in other hadith. Very famous hadith. Like the famous hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar, that the Prophet ﷺ said, جُزُّ الشَّوَارِبْ وَأَعْفُ اللِّحَى. Cut your mustaches and grow your beards. Cut your mustaches and grow your beards. Now, normally we say, the appearance of the Prophet ﷺ is not something which is a sunnah which people are required to follow. Because that goes back to the Prophet ﷺ's khilqah, his creation. And so when Anas ibn Malik says the Prophet ﷺ passed away and he only had 16 or 17 white hairs in his beard, Does it become a sunnah for a person to dye all of their white hairs except 16, 17? To follow this? No, that's not a sunnah. And Sahaba never viewed that to be a sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ had hair of a certain length. Growing that hair at that length isn't necessarily a sunnah. However, what distinguishes the beard from the hair is what? The command, prophetic command. If we had a command which said grow your hair long, we would say it's compulsory or at least strongly recommended to grow the hair long. So here that's what makes the beard different from other things. And so those who said that growing the beard was purely aada, custom, that's incorrect. Because the Prophet ﷺ doesn't command people to follow customs. He commands people to follow the deen, the sharia. Similarly, we have no hadith which commands the Muslims to wear a turban. And so that makes us inclined, and there's some khilaf on this, but it makes us inclined towards saying that the turban is a ibadah or ada? Ada. It's a ada. The Prophet ﷺ wore a turban, but so did the kuffar. They wore turbans too. So do many non-Muslims wear turbans. Had we had a command to have a turban, we would say, yeah, it's a sunnah to have a turban. But since we don't, it remains as being a aada. And the majority of fuqaha are of the opinion that growing the beard is wajib, because there's nothing that contradicts that hadith commanding growing the beard. That's the first thing. The majority of ulama believe that growing the beard is wajib. A minority of ulama say that growing the beard is from the sunnah of al-fitrah, like everything else. Like trimming the moustache is a sunnah, growing the beard should be a sunnah. And this is an interesting issue because many ulama do say trimming the moustache is a sunnah. But when it comes to the beard, they say the beard is wajib, even though they're commanded in the same hadith. And there's different reasons why different ulama say that. But the majority of fuqaha are of the view that having a beard is wajib. And the mashhur of the Shafi'i madhab, at least the later scholars of the Shafi'i madhab, is that it's makruh, disliked and discouraged to shave the beard. And the mashhur position of the other three madhahib is that it is haram to shave the beard. And there are a number of Shafi'i scholars who also believe that it's haram to shave the beard. Anyhow, the command of the Prophet ﷺ is there, and so there's no reason to oppose that command. At the same time, we have a number of the Sahaba trimming their beards, not shaving their beards. I don't know of a single report of a single companion who shaves his beard. That was viewed as contradicting manhood, let alone the Sharia. However, a number of the Sahaba, it's authentically reported that they used to trim their beards. We do not have an explicit hadith which says that the Prophet ﷺ himself used to trim his beard. But we have authentic hadith that a number of Sahaba used to trim their beards. The first is Abdullah ibn Umar. He used to trim his beard when he performed Hajj or Umrah. And Abdullah ibn Umar is the same companion who narrates the hadith which commands people to grow their beards, which implies that trimming the beard doesn't go against the prophetic command. Isn't that right? And if we know who Abdullah ibn Umar is, we appreciate that even more, because Abdullah ibn Umar is one of the strictest people in following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, even on things that aren't even a sunnah. Even on things that aren't a sunnah, technically, Ibn Umar would still be keen on following those things. And so, Abdullah ibn Umar used to trim his beard during Hajj or Umrah. Abu Hurairah used to also trim his beard, and it's narrated generally speaking, without restricting it to Hajj or Umrah. Abdullah ibn Abbas used to also trim his beard. And Ata narrates this from a number of the Sahaba and Tabi'een, that they used to trim their beards. And therefore, the position which prohibits trimming the beard, is a position which I haven't come across in the Salaf. And if someone finds an opinion amongst the Sahaba or Tabi'een, then they can benefit us with that. The opinion that some contemporary ulama hold, as respectable as some of these mashayikh are, that it's haram to trim the beard, is not an opinion which I've found amongst the Salaf, the Sahaba or the Tabi'een, or the Imams of the third generation. Nor Malik, nor Shafi'i, nor Ahmad, nor Ishaq, nor al-Bukhari, nor Abu Dawood, nor al-Tirmidhi. And so, it makes that position closer to being completely incorrect. That position is closer to being completely incorrect. And possibly even an invalid view. Possibly even an invalid view. Because if this opinion opposed one Sahabi, that's fine. 2 companions, fine. But if it opposes 5, 6, 7, 8 Sahaba, and we have no contradictory report from others, i.e. we don't have a single Sahabi criticizing someone for trimming their beard. Not a single one. And we don't have a single Tabi'i criticizing someone who trims their beard. That means this is closer to being an ijma' almost. And so unless somebody can find an opinion which exists in the early generations, in which case, jazakallahu khair. But like I said, that's not something that I've come across, nor other ulama who've spoken about this issue have come across. So we have that general principle, and that is that trimming the beard does not contradict growing the beard, the command to grow the beard. How much does a person trim? That's another discussion that fuqaha also disagree on. And Abu Hurairah and Ibn Umar used to trim, and Jabir used to trim what's below a fist. They would hold the fist like that and trim what's below. And other narrations don't talk about specific amount of trimming. They simply talk about يأخذ من لحيته من طولها وعرضها. He would take from his beard, some of the Sahaba and Tabi'een, from its length and from its width. And that's also the command of Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he even encouraged trimming the sides and the length of the beard if it got long or untidy. And it's the position of Imam Ahmad as well explicitly, and a number of the other muhaddithin explicitly hold that position. Wallahu a'lam. As for trimming the moustache, then the majority of ulama dislike shaving the moustache. Completely shaving the moustache. And Imam Malik used to strongly dislike shaving the moustache. Instead, they preferred trimming the moustache, removing, so that hair isn't, going over the lips here or getting too long. That's it. If a person does that, that is sufficient. Some ulama do, encourage shaving the moustache, but it's not the position of the majority of Sahaba. Imam Ahmad used to trim his moustache strongly, akhdan shadidan, so that the sort of part of it is, you see what's the word? You see the maybe the stubble or the effect of the shaving, but he doesn't completely shave his moustache. Yeah.
Is the wording trim the Arabic wording not to shave in the hadith?
A number of different wordings we have here. We have qas, which means to cut, to remove. Jaz also means to remove a lot, and so on. Akhadh in another hadith in Sunan Nasa'i. من لم يأخذ من شاربه فليس منا. Whoever doesn't take from the moustache, which implies not removing it altogether.
Not halq.
Allah, not halq, yeah. Siwak, and that's well known, using the siwak, and rinsing the nose, cutting the nails, and a number of ahadith talk about a limit of 40 days for cutting the nails and trimming the moustache and cutting the armpit hair and cutting the pubic hair. 40 days. However, this is a general principle, a general rule. It is not a restricted sunnah, because it goes back to the length of people's hair. Okay, someone might not grow anything, for a whole year, 2 hairs. They say after 40 days cut one hair, and the other 40 days cut the other hair, because that's not something which is intended by the Sharia. Because the objective of the Prophet ﷺ in telling us to do this is to maintain a moderate and appropriate appearance, not to harm ourselves unnecessarily. The hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, which is more authentic than this hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, says, "Khamsun min al-fitrah." There are 5 things from the fitrah. 5 things: cutting the mustache, cutting the nails, cutting the armpit hair and the pubic hair. What's the 5th one? Not siwak. The 5th one's not mentioned here.
Circumcision.
Circumcision, good. Wal khitan, circumcision. And circumcision, no doubt, is from Sunan al-Fitrah. And it's the Sunan of the Anbiya. And according to Imam Ahmad and a number of other ulama, circumcision is wajib. Circumcision is wajib. According to another opinion, because the command to circumcise in the Sunnah is not that emphasized, that made some scholars say it's a Sunnah mu'akkada, it's a strongly recommended Sunnah to have circumcision. And if people accept Islam at old age, we kind of give them that concession, to take with that opinion if they want to. People are still encouraged to be circumcised. Does anyone know what age Ibrahim was circumcised? 80 years of age, yes. And so circumcision is considered a sunnah, for all people at all ages, but it's better for it to be done at a young age for health reasons, and also that's the recommendation. And al-istinja. Interestingly, some of the Arabs weren't familiar with using water to wash the privates. They were familiar with wiping. And wiping using stones or other similar materials was a standard practice amongst the Arabs. And the Sharia did not prohibit that practice, by the way. Because a lot of the time, people associate wiping the privates with white people, as a lot of Muslims say. Isn't that correct? Even though the Sharia gives that concession. The Sharia gives that concession. And so, to sort of say that non-Muslims wipe themselves and we the clean Muslims, we wash ourselves. Yes, our Sharia teaches washing. It does. And it's recommended to wash the privates. But it's not a condition. It's not a condition. So when you view proper istinja, not lazy istinja, proper istinja, if you view that as something that's unclean, then you're describing a sunnah as unclean. And that's a dangerous thing to say.
Isn't that istijmar?
That's
Is
called.
there a differentiation between istinja and istijmar? Wiping and
They're used. Istinja is often used to refer to both interchangeably, but most of the fuqaha say istinja and istijmar. Istinja to mean water, and istijmar to mean to use the jamr, which is wiping with stones. So the point is, if a person wipes 3 times, that's the bare minimum on the condition that they don't leave behind anything which can be wiped further. In other words, what should be left after making istijmar, using wiping tissues or whatever, what should be left is something that only water can get rid of. Is that clear? That's the dhabit of the fuqaha. Only water can get rid of this. And so, if you can only do that after 4 wipes or 5 wipes, it's wajib to wipe 4 or 5 times. And washing is better. And the Prophet ﷺ used to wash. And sometimes he used istijmar. Hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud in al-Bukhari, he used istijmar, he didn't use water. So that's something to pay attention to. Istijmar is permissible. It's permissible. It's not haram. It's not haram, it's not unclean, so long as it's done properly. But water is more ideal. And even better is to make istijmar and then to finish with water. That's even better. No.
Sheikh, does this count for madhi and wadi as well? Is this count for prostatic fluid and other types of fluid as well?
You're talking about-
Istijmar to wipe.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, but the hadith seems to imply that the order seems to be to wash. The Prophet ﷺ said wash the
يغسل ذكر.
dhakar and then the testicle.
Yeah, so
The scholars reconcile that.
perhaps, according to a number of ulama, washing is compulsory. Shafi'i is one of them. And Ahmed has different narrations from him. He's talking about, medhi, pre-seminal fluid or other liquids that come out. Generally speaking, the Prophet ﷺ commanded Ali to wash. He commanded Ali ibn Abi Talib to wash. So that is that's the thing to do. Is istijmar permissible? Some ulama allowed it. And Ahmed allowed sprinkling as well. Sprinkling as opposed to properly washing. And washing is no doubt better. Allahu a'lam. He says, in this hadith, natf al-ibط and halq al-an. Of course, natf literally means plucking. Okay? Plucking the, armpit hair. But that's an option, it's not compulsory. Yeah. Does anyone here do that?
Maybe waxing.
I haven't come across people who... of course it would take time and, God knows how many screams. So removing the hair from around the privates or, around, both are permissible. And it's not necessarily a condition to remove every single hair. It's not a condition. Yeah, simply cutting properly is sufficient. Cutting properly is sufficient. Because the Sharia doesn't oblige things that cause mashaqqa on people. It's not easy for every person to be able to get rid of every hair. And so therefore the sunnah is simply to cut properly, to get rid of hair every so often. Wallahu a'lam. طيب, I've taken a long time on this hadith. It's quite a long hadith, it mentions quite a number of things. This hadith is narrated by Imam Muslim. However, it's weakened by Imam Ahmed. And it's also weakened by Imam al-Nasa'i. And it's also weakened by ad-Darqutni. And sometimes we find a hadith which ulama disagree over in terms of authenticity. The name that I mentioned to you earlier, قال الراوي, the narrator said, and I said it was Mus'ab ibn Shaybah. The debate is about Mus'ab ibn Shaybah because he is the only person who narrates this hadith. And because he's not from the most reliable people, some ulama consider him reliable and others not. Scholars debated over the authenticity of the hadith. Now, Imam Muslim mentions a more authentic report, then he mentions this report. So, did he mean by that this is just another weak report? Or did he mean by that, I know this is a weak report, but because it has supporting evidence, I'm going to mention it anyway? These are possibilities. And so, if you look at the content of the hadith, does anyone have any problem with any of the content? No. Every part of this hadith is proven by other hadith. And so, almost every hadith which has been debated academically, not debated by people who don't know hadith, debated academically in al-Bukhari and Muslim, 99% of those ahadith, if not more than that, are ahadith whose meanings are supported by other ahadith anyway. So weaken that hadith or don't weaken it, it's not a big deal. This hadith in Sahih Muslim here, let's say we got rid of it. We said it's a weak hadith. Munkar. As an-Nasa'i says. Yeah? Hadith munkar. No problem. Weaken the hadith. Because everything within that hadith is supported by verses and hadith elsewhere. Wallahu a'lam. So that's something important to keep in mind. If someone says, why have you got a problem? I'm questioning authentic hadith. Other ulama question authentic hadith. Look, Imam Ahmed weakened the hadith in Sahih Muslim. Look, ad-Darqutni questioned the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. Yeah, they questioned a hadith usually based on isnad, not based on content. You're going to make me spend the rest of the lesson turning pages. We have Jimmy, 2 more hadith on tahara and then we'll end it there inshallah ta'ala. Just me? All of these people. I'm the only one that... La. Firstly, I think it's going to impact the sound anyway. And secondly, this is قسمة ضيزة. وجهها إلى الناس. أي صح خلاص. If you want that one at the back, and it can come this way. هذا اللي في الخلف. If you want to put that, if you guys want to put that one on, that's okay. I already have special treatment by sitting on this chair above, which is already a problem. And on top of that, he says رحمه الله تعالى الحديث الثاني والعشرون, the 22nd hadith, عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الماء طهور, water is pure, لا ينجسه شيء, nothing impurifies it. رواه أحمد والترمذي وأبو داود والنسائي. This hadith gives us a general principle, and that is that water is pure and purifying. Only if water has been overcome by impurity does it now lose its ability to purify. As for small impact on this water, and we don't want to go too much detail of the fuqaha on this, a small amount of impurity or something minor that impacts the water, that's excused, that's forgiven. Al-ma'u tahur, la yunajjisuhu shay, nothing impurifies it. And hence, people are not requested to constantly ask about, is this clean water though? Are you sure this is clean? This water, I heard that they put stuff in this water and they do this. We don't need to ask all these questions. Water, as a general rule, is pure, it's tahur. And Allah Ta'ala gave water the quality of tathir, purifying. وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا, and we sent down from the sky water that is tahur. And the Prophet ﷺ always commanded to wash with water without going into details or telling people, but hold on, make sure it's this water that hasn't been touched with an impurity, water that hasn't been, no need for that. If water is overcome by impurity, its color changes, its smell completely changes, its taste completely changes, then that's another issue. Allahu A'lam. Does this apply to small amounts of water as well as large amounts of water? There's some khilaf. According to Shafi'i and Ahmed and the Hanafis, this rule only applies to large amounts of water. As for small amounts of water, even if a tiny impurity impacts it, that ruins the water as a whole. That's the position of Shafi'i and Ahmed, and Abu Hanifa and Abu Yusuf and Muhammad. And some fuqaha disagree with that. From the fuqaha who disagree with that is the author himself. Shaykh Abdul Rahman Sa'di doesn't look at quantity. He says we're not interested in quantity, we're interested in change. Does the water change? If it does, that's it. It's no longer purifying. If it doesn't change, then it is tahur. Final hadith for today's discussion is the hadith of Abu Qatada رضي الله عنه أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في الهرة. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said about the cat, إنها ليست بنجس, it's not impure. إنما هي من الطوافين أو إنها من الطوافين عليكم والطوافات. What's tawaf? Going around, roaming around, So it's saying that cats just make tawaf around your houses. They're constantly going around, mixing with people, intermingling with people, into house, outside the house. And so animals of that nature, and especially, cats in particular, the Prophet ﷺ is pointing out that they're pure. And the context behind this hadith is that the daughter-in-law of Abu Qatada once was in Abu Qatada's house. And this context is mentioned in detail in Jami' al-Tirmidhi and elsewhere, and Muwatta Malik as well. And he saw a cat coming So he gave this cat water to drink from a container which they use for wudu. So she's staring, kind of surprised. What's this guy doing? We're going to use that for wudu. So he said to her, why are you surprised? I heard the Prophet ﷺ say, إِنَّهَا لَيْسَتْ بِنَجَسٍ. It's not impure. إِنَّهَا مِنَ الطَّوَافِينَ عَلَيْكُمْ. So, this is also an example of the Sharia reducing the burden, reducing the mashaqqa for things that people are afflicted with a lot. When people are afflicted with things a lot, the Sharia, reduces the burden. And there are so many principles, so many qawa'id that come under this rule. From them, al-yaqinu la yazulu bi-shakk. Certainty isn't overcome by doubt. And this rule is one which really saves a lot of people. Imagine how much doubt people have about whether their shoes are clean or not, their clothes are clean or not. Did I make wudu? Did I lose my wudu or not? Did I do? And so the Sharia comes to say, ignore doubts and stick to certainty. You ignore doubt and stick to certainty. So we don't assume that the ground is impure. Yeah, but come on, dogs are walking around here and this and that. It doesn't matter. We don't make that assumption. In fact, I add another gift to that. In Sahih Bukhari, Abdullah ibn Umar says, dogs used to walk in and out of the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. فَكَانُوا لَا يَرُشُّونَ شَيْئًا مِنْ ذَلِكَ. And they would not wash anything. Dogs would walk in and out, in and out. That's fine. And so if a dog, passed by a person or came close to a person, or we don't need to, 99 different possibilities of what could have happened, and so therefore I might need to do this, or repeat wudu or wash my clothes and so on. No. Al-yaqinu la yazulu bi-shakk. Only if we're certain, that's when. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, we need a lecture about Abdullah ibn Mubarak, because this guy is an Imam rahimahullah. He says the type of certainty you need is the certainty which you are confident enough to swear by Allah. That's how confident you need to be. In other words, you guys prayed Maghrib now, yeah? You're about to pray Isha and you think, hold on, before I sat down, did I go to the bathroom or not? Did I lose my wudu or not? When I had to fix myself, did I touch my privates or not? And other things like that. Ibn Mubarak is saying you have to be confident enough to say, Wallahi, I lost my wudu. That's how confident you need to be. If you're confident enough to say, Wallahi, I lost my wudu, then repeat your wudu. No, keep your wudu. And this athar is narrated by At-Tirmidhi in his Jami from Ibn Mubarak. And so, the Sharia doesn't overburden people with that type of thinking, excessive thinking. And this rule applies not just to tahara, it applies to marriage, divorce, mahramiyya, all these other things. You have to be confident that you gave divorce for you to say, this is a divorce. I think, I kind of think, that's not yaqeen, that's not certainty. So this qa'idah, this principle that this hadith gives us and other hadith give us are beneficial in all aspects of the Sharia. Allahu a'lam. طيب. What is the time? 1:45. We'll suffice with that, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. Does anybody have any comments or? Yeah.
The hadith that was mentioned about the wudu.
Yeah.
And the ayah mentioned it's more of a command. Like if we took it in the Zahed, we would say that every single salah it's obligatory to make wudu again.
Yeah.
And the asl of the Hanafis is that the hadith can't do takhsis of the Quran if it's a general ayah. So
how do the Hanafis get around that?
Firstly, they don't say that. They don't say that hadith cannot do takhsis of an ayah. But a khabar which is ahad can't do takhsis. Maybe. According to a number of Hanafis. This is mutawatir. This is the ijma' of Sahaba, that a person is allowed to pray 2 prayers with 1 wudu. So this isn't a problem for any madhab.
I have a question, and it is in regard to the education of the children. So, for example, maybe some other people they made similar experiences. Whenever I ask my son he's 9 years old now, I ask him, did you make wudu? He always says,
Yes.
I still have wudu. And whenever I ask him, he has wudu, So I ask him, do you have wudu? Yeah, I have wudu. And then the thing is, in a way, I don't want to force him that if he says I have wudu, and we discuss that only if he's proper certain that he lost his wudu, then he should renew it. So in a way, I want to instill that in him and also teach him that, not always listen to Shaykh and to doubt. So, but on the other side, I know that he probably lost it, in between. Probably he released some air or something. How children are, so how can we balance?
It's a good question. And one of the first things that we mentioned, remember, when discussing this hadith, is that the recommended practice is to make wudu all the time. And so if we can make it habits for ourselves and our children to make wudu anyway, I've got wudu, that's okay. We make wudu again. That's greater in reward. Let's both go and make wudu again. And so if that becomes a routine, it won't become so burdensome to make wudu, and therefore there's no need they won't feel the need to lie. We also don't want to sort of belie children as well. You're lying, aren't you? Or, that type of thing. There's no need to go down that route. But if we can make it a routine to make wudu regularly, whilst teaching the qa'idah, al-yaqeen wal-yazur, at the same time, inshallah that's a balance.
I think it's just because of the fitrah that children from the fitrah are very forgetful, especially when they're young. So they always forget if they have it or not. So, but definitely it is a good advice that I will teach him that we should always renew our wudu.
Barakallahu feek. طيب, Jazakumullah khairan. And we continue inshallah next week. And next week the discussion is on a hadith relating to salah. Once again, few fiqhi discussions, but we can't encompass all the ahkam. Sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. جزاك الله خير الله يبارك فيك
في إيمان سندرة